Conjure's the big one for sure, that it slows down the Druid by quite a bit, but I would say it's not as vulnerable as the Druid is not quite as vulnerable to that as, say, OTK Demon Hunter or Mozaki Mage, because Druid runs quite a few more minions to kind of have that redundancy to protect the most important ones from being chomped up. But we can already see what's on Xiaobai's mind by just keeping it straight off the bat.
Yeah, I absolutely adore this mulligan for Xiaobai. I think it shows excellent understanding of the matchup because, you know, yes, you can mulligan for the traditionally good cards in any matchup, be it Wildpaw Cavern is the big one, of course, and then just, I don't know, ways to corrupt your cards. Sleepbreaker is fantastic, Gavel is good as well, but this is really your best chance of winning in the matchup. You chomp up Mr. Smite, you chomp up Anaconda, ideally, as you said, maybe Lock Halar just to gain the maximum amount of stats, and then you pray that that is enough to get there, and we'll see. We'll see if the plan will come together for Xiaobai, because if he can turn this one around, take a win with an unfavorable deck right out the gate, I think his chances in the series become a lot better, because for Frenetic, he's got a reasonable hand to be moving on with here, but it looks like it's going to need a little bit extra, I think, right now.
I'm glad you brought up the Lock Halar because already we're staring at this interaction, right? And I'm trying to figure out whether chomping something that's not a win condition for the Druid, but just huge stats is enough to get there, because classically, Druid has just not had a very good time of dealing with singular large targets, and Mutinous eating an 8-8 goes up to a 12-12, and that's just a nightmare for Druid to have to deal with, especially when they want to play alignment and the Mutinous just goes down to 1 mana to cast. So we could be looking at a big 50-50 here if Frenetic doesn't draw any further minions. If the Mutinous eats the Owl, that feels like it's still within a doable range for Frenetic to clear, but if it eats the Lock Halar, that might just be a little bit too much pressure. For now though, Xiaobai has the option to just put a Wind Chill in his hand using the Sleepbreaker. Not quite enough spell schools in the multicaster, I think, yet to let rip with it.
Yeah, there was some nonsense you could try and pull with, like swing with the weapon, bloom out a Wind Chill, and then go for the multicaster, but I fully agree that you just take things nice and simple here and don't mess about with any fancy plays of trying to get it, trying to go for a multicaster immediately. You just want to get that Mutinous down as soon as possible is your best chance of taking the win.
Magic.
Another multicaster picked up, but Xiaobai reaches for the cheaper one. I guess he's also just going to commit the other Wind Chill here. I like this a lot. A lot of the time, you kind of just expect to get aligned anyway, so there's no kind of priority to go by the basic rule of Hearthstone, which is if you have the free mana, use the more expensive card. But as we can see, Frenetic is just going for the insta alignment and commits the Owl, which means Mutinous only has good targets now. Good and better, I would argue.
Exactly, and if Xiaobai can hit the Mutinous or the Brilliant Macaw, he can eat twice. Obviously with the Gavel discounting a Battlecry card in hand.
If he wants, he can Bloom to play both guaranteed.
Very true.
And you
could even just play a 10-10.
for a 10-10, yeah. Wow. This is not even going to be close. It's just the perfect answer. 2 targets chomped.
The absolute dream. Frenetic needs a miracle to have any chance here whatsoever. He can't even believe what he's seeing. As I was saying, this is a fantastic matchup on average for the Druid. And yet still, he is just in an absolute disaster scenario. Has to just go for Cenarian Ward, which you truly never ever want to see. And I think as we can see here, only removing 3 power from the board does not even scratch this. Game 1 going to Xiaobai in a very, very expertly maneuvered series.
You just knew what was up, right? Alignment can beat your OTK, but how can you punish alignment? You keep the big minions, and of course it was fortunate to have enough cycle in the early game and mid game with the multicasters, which allowed him to also pick up the Macaw and the Year Charge for immediate follow-up pressure, but it was really the Mutinous with the Lightning Bloom keep that allowed him to put together that game plan. And Frenetic already down 0-1. Kind of a tough spot to be in, especially since a lot of people looking at Xiaobai's lineup kind of thought potentially they could just prey on the Shaman, see that as a weak link and sweep it because this is Conquest.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think that is by far the most important win for Xiaobai, as he has left over the Garrote Rogue. Fantastic. I think that's just a generally very good class that you're expecting to get a win with at some point. And also, more interestingly, the Owl Warlock, one of only 2 players to bring it, alongside Gabby, of course, who was able to just get a very clean win in the previous series in his 3-0 sweep over Tianming. And for Xiaobai, I think, again, it's going to be a pretty good class here, right? The Druid, I think, again, that's a potential struggle matchup. It's hard to overcome the power of the Celestial alignment from your opponent if they have that, and there's even less punishes for it than there are in the Shaman. But against the Warrior, against the Rogue as well, I think there's a real game for the Warlock.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. The Warlock, I mean, we've talked about this deck as being one of the 2 new archetypes that we're seeing from Alterac Valley, but it's kind of a stretch to call it completely new, I would say, because a lot of the shell of the deck is just what we were seeing from the old Delete Warlock, the deck that I feel at the last Masters Tour Tianming actually piloted to the best compared to the rest of the field. Of course, it's not running the quest, so it's not quite exactly the same, but you still have the Rune Mithril Rod, you still have tons of card draw, you still have the capability of healing for 1 billion throughout the course of the game, but now that's bolstered by the addition of Drudlich Tamsin, and now you have a much faster win condition compared to Blightborn Tamsin in the fact that you can just get the damage from the Phylactery and the Owl Death Rattle. Xiaobai gonna go for his Garrote Rogue first, though. Nothing too out of the ordinary with this list, but I suppose the one sort of talking point we've had with the deck building is whether or not you include Viper in the Garrote Rogue, which we have a pretty even split of Viper and no Viper in our field.
That's right, and as we were kind of hypothesizing just before the tournament, once we'd seen the deck list, it looked like Viper was a bit of a miss in terms of a tech overall. There haven't been all too many Warlocks, haven't been that many Paladins either, and those are generally the 2 main classes, as I believe the Hearthstone Twitter account also tweeted out. It's the Rome Sisters' worst nightmare is roster of Viper, right, to take out the immovable object and also the Warlock weapon, the Rune Mithril Rod, which is just so devastating for the Warlock to lose. But against Druid, it's obviously complete whiff. You are just looking more so for the classic Garrote Rogue combo pieces. As Frenetic, I think probably here, I would say, has himself a favourable, but it's a lot closer overall, as Garrote Rogue has fantastic disruption, in addition to just a lot of high tempo options that the Druid really struggles with.
Yeah, I love the keep from Xiaobai right off the bat. This is exactly what you want to see as Garrote Rogue. I completely agree that it is a Druid favorable, a pretty heavy one in my opinion as well. But the Rogue, when piloted by somebody who knows the exact game plan, which is to go for playing the Rogue as a Zoo deck, definitely still has a chance. So that Octobot is a big deal to make sure you can just vomit your little minions as quickly as possible. Try and punish the Druid for the early turns when they're just trying to go for ramp and card draw and not really developing anything on the board, and then the Neophyte accomplishes both, punching them in the face for quite a lot of damage and also maybe making one of their specific spell turns have to occur 1 turn later.
Frenetic taking the option here to play out the Jerry-Rig Carpenter is probably correct, but I was going to bring up that there's the possibility that you can just pass the turn and then go for Gold Chenol to be able to try and clear it off without proccing it. Probably your opponent has some way of proccing the Octobot on their own turn, which is why I think on average he does just correctly go for the Jerry-Rig Carpenter. But it does speed up his opponent quite a lot here overall.
It does in a certain sense, which is like all of the threats can come down this turn, but because Xiaobai has not really discounted any further minions or card draw, he's discounted spells and scabs, he is going to have quite a few slow turns, and he is of the opinion that you can just throw out a Garrote here purely for combo activation. And if I recall during practice, this is something I was bringing up of like, I really don't hate the idea of just playing a Garrote when you have the mana spare. Obviously better when you have spell damage, but Xiaobai is clearly indicating here that he doesn't see the combo as a win condition here, and I completely agree, because if you wait that long, generally the Druid has stacked up enough armor to beat the Garrote breakpoints anyway.
Oh, another miserable draw for Xiaobai, the prize plunderer. Really not what you want to see is just a 1-mana 2-1 here. The Murloc Raider, it's bad drawing it in the tutorial, but it's even worse drawing it in the Hearthstone World Championships. Shadowcrafter Scabs, though, might be the card that can at least buy him a little bit of extra time, right? Being able to send this 8-drop back to hand and then immediately replay the Cult Neophyte with the Scabs hero power is a very strong play on this turn.
Exarch Urel, one of the worst outcomes for an 8-drop here, but Frenetic, I think, is just going for the idea that he's just gonna play 3 Cenarian Wards in a row, and that should generally be enough to stabilize. And I agree with that idea. There's, outside of even the super high roll options, just the armor and the stats should be enough to get there, but the insta-scabs from Xiaobai is a very big deal. The Cult Neophyte, care of Scab's hero power, can also come down this turn and shuts down Frenetic's plan of the consecutive Cenarian Wards. And now he's looking at needing to find some type of taunt, I suppose. I don't think he can interact with these stealth minions whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm probably looking at like Mr. Smite on this turn. You really don't have to go for the Pyra OTK win condition in this matchup. You can just get there with huge boards from Cenarian Ward and Survival of the Fittest. And so just Mr. Smite jerry-rig to be able to clear off the Cult Neophyte, I think is perfectly reasonable, and then just hope to get some good outcomes off of the Solar Cenarian afterwards.
Now, by choosing to step and immediately replay the Neophyte, I guess hoping to shut down the alignment. Breakpoint still would have been playable if one Neophyte aura only were in play. I'm not honestly sure if the alignment would have been that bad for Xiaobai at this point, but I can get behind the idea that the Shadow Step really isn't doing much in his situation unless he gets like exactly field contact. He's just going to go ahead and proc his Swindle with the Octobot here, hoping for further card draw. One of the 2 bleeds in the deck getting drawn out.
Okay, passage, contact, good draws, good draws.
Only needs a little bit more damage to get there, honestly. He's got 11 on board plus the dagger swing. For a second, you wish you could put Wicked Stab back in tempo Rogue and just play that.
Obviously looking for Shadow Step, second Cult Neophyte here to be able to get himself a little bit of extra activation. Goes for Swindle, can still hit the Shadow Step to make these spells more expensive, but I believe misses on it here, which means Frenetic, while he is under a monstrous amount of pressure here. Oh no, it is the Shadow Step! Oh no! Oh, you
just
can't
like
even...
you with your memes, Derek, he never misses. Xiaobai has played another Cult Neophyte, and Frenetic has to hit Brasswing off of Cenarian Lord. Yeah, that's the out.
It. He can go for Eclipse first because he has a mana spare. It will go down to 7.
Correct.
But I agree, it's pretty much Brasswing or bust.
It's Bustwing, Derek. That is an Arcane Devourer. No new 8-drops appearing this time, and just like that, Xiaobai is up 2-0.
Oh, my poor boy Frenetic going down 0-2 at the start here with the Druid. Just 2 perfectly good matchups. I would argue slightly favorable. Again, as I said, Rogue is a little bit more debatable. But just getting the rough end of it on both sides is a disaster. And for Xiaobai, the big thing for me here that I can answer now, obviously he lost his first series, but so far with the way he's been playing, again, the question was, has he still got what it takes to compete with the best of them? Because if we think back to his victory in the Masters Tour, it wasn't last meta, it was last rotation. This man was playing when lackeys were still in the game when he got his victory at Masters Tour Ironforge, which just seems like an entirely different world at this point. But it was, in a way, it was a very, very different meta, a whole different set of skills that you needed to, much less combo decks, much more tempo-oriented in terms of the game plan that you were going for. Whereas now it seems like his game plan has transitioned perfectly. His set of skills have allowed him to play very, very well in both the previous expansion or previous rotation and this one as well, leaving him with only the Owl Warlock left to get a win with, as Frenetic is again queuing up this Druid, and again, I'm going to argue, has a favorable match.
Yes, I would agree here, because the Druid can get alignment online generally before the Owl Warlock is able to put together their OTK. I did a quick survey among us casters whether anybody has played this matchup from the Warlock version and managed to set up the Punish for alignment, which is a very specific set of cards already being in hand, and you need to have the Rune Mithril Rod at like 3 out of 4 procs. And then when your opponent casts alignment, you draw the 4th proc, so your entire hand goes down to 0 with that discount, and technically you are able to get the OTK that way, but the stars truly have to align for that to work, and something tells me there's not going to be a big hoot for the Warlock in this matchup.
Yeah, the alternate win conditions, of course, Mutinous can help, but it's interesting you bring up like Rod in response to Celestial Alignment, because absolutely that's the quote-unquote punish, right? Is you can make your entire hand cost 0 after they make it all cost 1. But so often in this matchup, I found that I play alignment even after my opponent's played Rod, and they have like 9 or 10 cards in hand because they really struggle to use their removal. They have so much card draw in their deck, and at that point it actually becomes really difficult to even activate the Rod, because you can't play a bunch of cards in the same turn because they all cost 1 and you have no mana. So you can't play the Dreadlich Tamsin, the Backfire, any of these big card draw cards, and then it just becomes overwhelmingly favored for Frenetic. And so even though Xiaobai has the premium card in his starting hand of Runed Mithril Rod, with Frenetic having both Overgrowth and Celestial Alignment, again, I think he's in the lead.
Yeah, definitely feels like it, but I'm super glad that we get to see this exact situation in the mulligans, right? So we can see whether or not there is an available punish for Xiaobai, and if there is, Frenetic, of course, doesn't necessarily have to play alignment the very first turn that he's available to do so with the mana. If it's going into a turn where Xiaobai already has Rune Mithril Rod equipped and say it's at 3 out of 4, it might be wise to let him have the discount and then go for the alignment so that they don't immediately get the whole hand to cost 0, but we'll see how it pans out. Frenetic for now has amazing choices outside of the alignment as well. The Wild Heart Guff can be developed to help him ramp through a different way or just draw some more cards.
Xiaobai again holding off on the Rune Mithril Rod, a play that I think many players would have just snapped straight away. It's usually what you do on turn 3 is the best thing you can do, being Rune Mithril Rod. But again, it just speaks to me of a player who knows the intricacies of these matchups inside and out. He's trying to save this Rune Mithril Rod for the turn before a Celestial Alignment is likely to come down. And after he sees the Overgrowth, I think it'll be a snap Runed Mithril Rod in response. And therefore, you know, setting up a tour guide, very possibly even with Grimoire of Sacrifice, just to dump it, or even like tour guide coin the Mana Feeder Panthara without even pressing the hero power. These are the kind of plays I'm looking at, because again, if you want Runed Mithril Rod to work in response to Celestial Alignment, you need a small hand.
I was looking at the tour guide with the coin Panthara play. Even with the tap, I think it still could have worked out, right? Because he could have gone Mithril Rod and then activate with Natural Draw into Backfire, depending on the timing of the alignment, of course. But Xiaobai going for the even more measured approach of holding onto the coin entirely, has Mutinous in hand now, with once again some very good targets outside of the Owl. But Frenetic here, now's the big question, right? He sees the Rod. Is he going to go alignment? Nope. It is respect here for the possibility of Backfire into OTK. He plays Guff for card draw here. I think he's in no rush to ramp without, you know, Anaconda already.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that this is potentially setting up the true one-turn kill, right, where you go Anaconda plus the Celestial Alignment all on the same turn. But now that I see it, it's much more, I think, just about letting your opponent activate the Rod, then you go for the Celestial Alignment afterwards. But here, look at how Xiaobai has set this up. This is exactly what you were talking about, leaving it deliberately at 3 out of 4 cards drawn for the activation, which means Frenetic has to delay again on the Celestial Alignment if he wants to. And it just slows down Frenetic yet further and allows Xiaobai to keep digging towards his own win condition at the same time.
I suppose the one thing Frenetic has going for him outside of just the billion mana and cards in hand is the fact that Owl Warlock generally has to take a whole turn of setup of playing the Owl and a lot of the time killing it that same turn in order to put that Death Rattle in the pool for the Phylactery. So a lot of the time they say face up, I'm going for the OTK the very next turn. So Frenetic could have that information. There are some hands, if they've managed to get enough discounts, where the Owl can come down and die and the Phylactery can be played all at once. But generally that means that the rod has had to go off twice, maybe even the second rod has had to go off on that hand. And in that world, Frenetic can answer with the alignment, right? Because after the discounts are done, then the alignment gets even more punishing. Here's Mutinous gets the worst target in the situation. Not a very big chomp, but I suppose you could look at it in a way as limiting Frenetic's overall burst potential, because that's one less pirate with charge. But here is Anaconda now, and now things are starting to get very complex.
They really are, because you have the possibility for Anaconda Bloom Celestial alignment on this turn with another Bloom and a Moonlit Guidance. However, if you miss on the good card draw options, things start to look very dicey. You've then used pretty much your entire combo, you're overloaded next turn, and things get very, very dicey. So I respect Frenetic for taking what looks like a turn off the pedal, rather than going all in right now.
Yeah, even if you could say, oh, just alignment because they're at 0 out of 4 procs on the Rune Mithril Rod. Xiaobai has a 0-cost tap banked, so he's actually just like a backfire away from still triggering, even with little mana available. Frenetic is going to end with the alignment though, which is a halfway play, right? Because he gets this down but doesn't delete his next turn because he hasn't played a Lightning Bloom. He has more flexibility. And now we get to see the response from Xiaobai. Just gonna use the coin to dump a card from hand, going to draw 3 with the backfire, and so everything is all the way down to 0. Is there an Owl in this hand? There is not.
Yeah, I mean, if there was an Owl there, that was just lethal, maybe? Like, there was a lot that could be done there. You could kill off the Owl, Tams in, and then AoE your entire board. It was very, very close indeed. And it looks like it might even still be possible.
It could very well if there's the hand space, because the Tamsin will get him further card draw. But we'll see. He's only at 0 proc, so he needs one more card draw to get everything to cost 0 again.
Yeah, there's no way to draw another card, is there? So I don't think he can get himself lethal on this turn. He's just trying to set it up for the following turn.
I mean, it's still a very admirable effort, and if Frenetic doesn't kill right on this turn, Xiaobai very likely has it the next turn. In fact, it's guaranteed. The Owl is just in hand right now, so he can absolutely play that, kill it off with the Grimoire of Sacrifice. Even if none of these remaining minions stick on the board, he has Wicked Shipment and Armor Vendor to put 8 damage Death Rattle on all of those with the Phylactery, and then just blow them up with the remaining spells. So Frenetic needs to go real quick here. He lost the Jerry Rig Carpenter, and he hasn't found a Survival of the Fittest just yet, so it's looking dicey.
It is. If he can find himself Taint Heart Tormentor, then maybe he could just be able to deny his opponent's spells too heavily. But now he's got no card draw, no survival. Mr. Smite is not even coming close to lethal here. No card draw to bolster him and get the lethal. And so Frenetic has to do the best job that he can clearing this up. But for Xiaobai, as I see it, whether or not he has enough damage is another question, because this is a huge amount of health and armor that Frenetic has access to, especially now that the Moargs have gone, so that the AoE is less effective. But it looks like the lethal is very possible, if nothing else.
I could not tell you here, honestly. First of all, I don't even know what level the Wicked Shipment is at, but for anyone who isn't familiar, the way the OTK works is first you get this Owl Death Rattle in the pool, which means Tamsin's Phylactery can discover that Death Rattle and put it on all of your minions on the board by that point. So we're dealing in increments of 8 here, right? All of the minions, they die to 1 hit of the Owl now. So effectively, we're looking at like 4 procs on the minions, and then you need 5 procs on Frenetic's health. So you need 9 minions to have the Owl Death Rattle, and that's just not possible, right?
Not without Tamsin, yeah.
But of course, he can still just clear the board and, you know, go off with the Phylactery another turn. The Grimoire of Sacrifice can help with that.
Okay.
He's just cleaning up with the Drain Soul.
And with the Tamsin dead as well,
wait.
now nothing is playable for Frenetic on this turn at all. He just has to pass. And I think with that, it becomes a lot more likely that Xiaobai can get the lethal next turn.
Yeah. Again, not sure how many minions are in the shipment. I don't think he traded any, so I'm going to say it's still just the base 2. So plus Armor Vendor, that's 3 procs of an Owl. It's only 24 damage. Oh, it's 4, my bad.
Once. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he traded once earlier on.
Okay, so it just works
seems
then.
confident that he's got it right.
Yeah, because he can Drain Soul the Turalian, so this is just perfect 4D.
Yep, exact lethal. I think you're right. No Tamsin needed, even against all the armor that Druid can gain. And Frenetic, comes into the tournament looking incredibly strong. I expected more from him, and I think overall he can hold his head high, but it is not to be this year.
Wait. Okay, yeah, sorry, the
Yes.
Drain Soul resolved.
Okay.
Yes, my bad.
There we
very
go.
clever there. I misspoke. The Drain Soul was supposed to go on the Armor Vendor, and then you just use the School Spirits to deal with the Turalian. Very cleanly set up there with the preloaded damage, but super sorry to cut you off there. It was just such a quick 3-0 indeed. Frenetic going out in a way that I'm sure a lot of his fans did not hope for, but, you know, Xiaobai, I think he just looked absolutely on point with the plays there.
Yeah, as big of a Frenetic fan as I am, my paracetamol adult brain cannot complain too much with a nice 3-0 sweep there for Xiaobai, as the hope for China is still alive. Tianming could not get it done, but for Xiaobai, there is still the chance for him to get the World Championship, which means all of the regions still in the running after the first day of competition. Gia, obviously, APAC looking the strongest, as we all knew was going to happen, let's be honest, with both Possessi and Glory guaranteed already in the semi-finals. Tomorrow, though, however, we're going to be finding out, first of all, who our other 2 semi-finalists are going to be, and I think we are guaranteed some fantastic series of Hearthstone.
Absolutely. We've had the whole gauntlet today, right? Some series that went in absolute quick sweeps, some that went all the way down to the wire. But no matter what the results are, players have all shown the same level of stress, nerves, excitement, pressure, and relief if they have managed to make it through to another day. So despite having to say goodbye to 2 of our players, everybody still has a shot tomorrow, and I can't wait to find out who will be our next world champion. And whether it'll be the same one as last year, that's still a possibility.
It is still a possibility. We could have the back-to-back first-time double-time winner in Hearthstone for Glory. McBanterface versus Xiaobai will be our second match of the day tomorrow, after Naugadan versus Gabby to kick things off. Huge amounts on the line for all of our competitors. I think that I can speak for all of us when Banterface has very much endeared us all to him with some very, very unique lineups along the way, and just overall very, very solid level of Hearthstone today. I think the nerves getting the better of him a little bit maybe in